Josh Chen.
And we've been working on composites for the rover. So when you're making a composite part to use its high strength properties while keeping all the parts you use low weight, which is really great because then you have to pay a lot less for it to get to the moon, but it still is effective and strong once you get there. So to make a composite part like this one, you first have to make a mold. And so you glue a bunch of high density foam or buy some aluminum, and then you design it and put it on a CNC or a robotic arm, and it'll carve out a foam for you. So when you have your pieces of composite fabric, you wet them with epoxy if you're doing a wet layup. So you'll mix epoxy and then you'll spread it over the fabric and let it soak and then remove the excess. And it makes the fabric sticky and will make it, when you cure it, hard. You can also use composite fabric called prepreg. Prepreg is carbon fiber that's pre-impregnated with small quantities of epoxy. And when you use prepreg, you just don't have to wet your fabric. You can just cut your fabric to size, lay it up, and stick it in the oven under pressure. But we did wet layout. So as I said, you wet the composite fibers and then lay them in the correct shape. And you just kind of like lay them one over each other to get the correct thickness that you want. And then you take the whole thing and basically put it in a plastic bag and put it under a vacuum and stick it in an oven at a high temperature for a long period of time. And then it comes out like a strong piece of plastic almost.
Yeah. What else is there? Oh, so we have to, afterwards, you come up with a piece that looks like, it looks like this. It's not done yet, so we're gonna take it to some sort of CNC and then trim it to size so it'll look more like our finished part. Because right now we have just like kind of sloppy edges here. That'll get trimmed down to size.
When you finish laying up your part, you have to apply vacuum and put it in the oven, and that involves a bagging process. So you put it basically in a giant plastic bag, and the outside of the plastic bag is this pink stuff. It's a high temperature fabric that will stand vacuum, so it can go in the oven and it won't melt, and it will withstand the pressures of vacuum. Then you put this blue fabric, or this blue plastic, in between the part, like right over all of your carbon fiber, so that your carbon fiber doesn't get stuck to anything else. When you're doing a wet layup, the blue fabric is good because it'll soak up extra epoxy. But if you're using prepreg, you can use the shiny blue plastic, just because you don't actually have that much epoxy in it. So once you do all of that, take this big white fluffy stuff that looks a lot like felt, and it's called breather. So you just lay it all over where your part is, because when you apply vacuum to you only apply vacuum to one spot, and the breather will spread the vacuum to the entire bag. So you just want to have it over your part so that your entire part feels the vacuum. So those are all the different layers of everything that goes inside. And then you close it up, attach your vacuum close to it, suck it all out. Then you stick it in the oven for about 8 hours if you're using a foam mold, or 3 hours if you're using a metal mold, at about 250 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a mold. It used to be a giant foam block, and a robot arm or a CNC will come in and mill out these channels for us. So then what we'll do is do a light sanding of the whole thing. This particular mold is very delicate. It has a slight curve and a slight angle on it. So we have to maintain this slight curve and the slight angle on the channels so that we can't actually do intense sanding. It's also not a flat surface, so it all has to be hand sanded inside each channel. So the walls as well as the bottom of each channel has to be sanded, and then we apply a coat of epoxy to the entire thing, including like some of the sides, because carbon fiber will like overlap, won't be too much. And then we have to sand that down again through like all of the channels and all the bits and pieces, make sure it's still the right shape. And then we have to put down another layer of epoxy and do that again. And at that point, the mold is ready to go under the final preparation separations. So we clean it off with like a stripper, almost like paint thinner kind of stuff, a couple times to make sure it's really clean, because there's also like dust particles left from all the sanding and all that kind of stuff. And then we seal it, and it sits for 24 hours after we've sealed it, and then we put mold release on it so that the carbon fiber and epoxy don't stick to the foam mold.